Hello, welcome to the first year BHM course of Guru Nanak Institute of Technology, Kolkata. I'm Dr. Indrajit Bose and I shall be your course coordinator for this session. This paper is entitled Business Communication with the paper code of BHM 102. In the course of the lectures in this paper, we have been taking a look at the various forms, genres, and modes of written and spoken communication in English in the workplace. Now, I think all of you are aware that after passing out of this course, you will be taking up a managerial or administrative job in the hospital and healthcare sector. So you may be given the task of interacting with members of the public, with patients and their families, with doctors and other medical professionals. You will have a lot of responsibilities of looking after the day-to-day maintenance and administration in the hospital or the healthcare facility, of looking after the staff needs, the patient needs, the billing and financial records. So you will have different kinds of job responsibilities and functions. The English that we learn in this business communication paper is geared towards equipping you with the requisite language skills, both in speaking and writing, so that you can function efficiently in the workplace context in the future. Therefore, we have got different modules in this paper. Module 1 is based on functional grammar. The second module, module 2, is on different types of writing or written communication. And module 3 deals with the theoretical backdrop and practical applications of communication using different public media and social media in the hospital context. Now, this lecture that we are focusing on today is lecture 14 in the series, and we are going to look at active and passive voice, which is one of the basic elements in construction in grammar. So today's lecture is going to be on the uses of active and passive voice and of transforming from active to passive. Now, obviously, you have studied something about active passive voice change and transformation before in school, so the subject is not entirely new to you. But you will have to learn how to effect these transformations and what is the effect really of switching over from active to passive and why passive constructions are used. So we shall be looking at that or studying that today in the course of the lecture. To begin with, of course, voice is an aspect of verbs. And you all know that verbs are about action and activity. They indicate that action of some kind is taking place. So it is very natural that voice should indicate who is doing what or initiating what sort or kind of activity. Now, we say that a verb is in the active voice when the doer of the action is also the subject of the verb. Whereas we say that a verb is in the passive voice when the doer or subject does not act but suffers some action, or in other words, is passive. So if the doer or subject initiates or takes the initiative in doing the action, performing the action, then the verb is said to be in the active voice. Whereas if the subject does not act but is passive, then we say that the verb is in the passive voice. Now, you look at the following sentences, please. Can you identify the doer or agent in each case? Let us see. Our neighbor phoned the police. So what is the action being talked about over here? That of telephoning the police. Mother baked a cake for Susan's birthday. So again here the action is that of baking the cake. Hurry opened the gate for the car to pass. Again here the action is that of opening the gate for the car to pass through it. We had gone for a picnic to Box Hill last Sunday. Again here the action is that of going on a picnic to Box Hill. Now, let us try and make these identifications as to who is initiating what kind of action in each of these four cases. Let us see. Now, in sentence 1, the neighbor is the subject, and what the neighbor does is to ring up the police. That's the action. In sentence 2, mother is the subject, and what she does is she bakes a cake, which is the action. In sentence 3, Hari is the subject, and what he does is to open the gate, which is the action in this case. And in sentence 4, we are the subject, and the action is that of going on a picnic. We went for a picnic. This is what the sentence says. Now, in all these cases, the subject, that is the neighbor, mother, Hari, and me, the subject in all these cases initiates the action. Hence, these verbs are in the active voice. Now, look at the following two sentences. Children are forbidden to use mobile phones, and Sarita was made to redo the essay by her teacher. Now, who are the agents in this case? What are they doing? So, children are forbidden to use mobile phones, and Sarita was made to redo the essay by her teacher. Now, in both these cases, something is happening to Sarita and the children. They are not active but passive. Sarita is being made to redo the essay by somebody else, and the children are forbidden to use mobile phones by somebody else. So they are not initiating the action, rather, they are passive. Now, these actions that are prohibiting the use of mobile phones and that are redoing the homework are initiated by somebody else. So, in Sarita's case, it is probably her teacher. I will just go back to the previous slide. Yes, Sarita was made to redo the essay by her teacher. So, we are told that it is her teacher who makes her redo the essay. And we are not told exactly who has forbidden the children to use mobile phones, but we presume that it is the authorities or somebody in the authorities who have forbidden the use of mobile phones. So we can say that Sarita and the children are both passive over here, and they are not initiating the action. The action is initiated by somebody else. Now compare them in the use of the active voice. These same sentences. The authorities have forbidden children to use mobile phones. So this is putting it explicitly. So we can understand now that it's the authorities who have actually forbidden the use of the mobile phones by children, and we are just omitting the use of the agent with by in the passive voice, which is used over here. Children are forbidden to use mobile phones. Now, we are not told by whom, by the authorities, of course, but it is taken as an assumption, implicit assumption. So, the by with the agent is omitted over here, as is the common practice of. And the second one is the teacher made Sarita redo the essay. This is transformed the passive to Sarita was made to redo the essay by her teacher. So, it's the teacher who has actually done that, and Sarita is the passive agent over here. Okay, please do note that the subject-object switch between the active and the passive, which takes place whenever there is a switchover or transformation. The subject of the verb in the active voice becomes the object in the passive voice and vice versa. So we can say that there is always a subject-object switch taking place whenever there is a transformation from active to passive. Now, what happens when we transform from active to passive? The passive verb is actually be plus passive participle. For example, are made. The cookies are made, or is baked. The cake is baked. Now, only the transitive verbs can be used in the passive voice, as intransitive verbs have no agents. Intransitive verbs have no objects. So only transitive verbs can be used in the passive voice, as intransitive verbs have no objects. The object becomes the subject and the subject becomes the object, or in other words, there is a switchover of subject and object between the active and passive voices. What about the tenses? The tenses in the passive generally follow those in the active. So the tense is not going to change, whereas the subject and object will change, or they will rather be interchanged with one another. Okay, let us see some of the changes in the tenses in the passive. Okay, let us see. For example, if we have a sentence in the present simple like, we bottle the preserves in the active voice. So who is the agent? It's we. And what's the action in this case? It's that of bottling the preserves. So changed into the passive, this would be the preserves are bottled. So we bottle the preserves are bottled. So it is by us, but we can omit by us because it is implicitly understood. We bottle the preserves becomes the preserves are bottled. And you will notice that there is a subject-object switch taking place over here. Okay. In present continuous, we are bottling the preserves. So it is being done at this point of time. This will become the preserves are being bottled. In future simple, it can be we shall bottle the preserves. This will become the preserves shall be bottled. So these are some uses of the tenses. We can see that the tenses remain the same. Now let us see some more detailed examples of the use of the tenses. Yes, the present tense first. Look at the transformations from active to passive in the present tense. For example, if you have a sentence like this in the present simple, Savita writes the report. This will become the report is written by Savita, or the report is written by her. In the present perfect, or we can omit the agent with by over here, and we can make that into the report is written. We don't need to say by her or by Savita or anything like that. We can just omit that. We can say the report is written. Savita writes the report is written. In present perfect, this will be Savita has written the report. So when we transform that into the passive, what will it be like? The report has been written. Okay. In present continuous, Savita is writing the report. So changed into the passive, this would be the report is being written. You may use by Savita or by her, but you may not use it also. In present perfect continuous, it will be Savita has been writing the report. Changed into the passive, this will be the report has been being written by Savita. Now, let's look at the changes in the past. Okay, suppose we have a sentence like this. John cleaned the house. This is in the simple past. So who is the agent? John. What is the action involved? That of cleaning the house. What has John done? He has cleaned the house. Okay. So suppose I change this into the passive. So this will be the house was cleaned by John. Now again, you may use by John or you may omit that again also if you want. But basically it is understood that the house, which is the object, is now becoming the subject, and John, which was the subject, is now becoming the object. Okay, so this is the kind of transformation that is taking place in the use of the past simple. Now, suppose I have a different kind of sentence, that is, John had cleaned the house. So he had done that last Saturday, let's say. Okay? So that is in the past perfect. Now suppose I want to change that into the passive. What will I say? The house had been cleaned by John is understood. So the house had been cleaned last Saturday, for example, or in some time in the past, but that is now over. Again, suppose I want to indicate a continuing action in the past. I can use a past continuous form, like John was cleaning the house, or in other words, he was in the process of cleaning the house. So this is an action in the past which is continuing for some time. So it is in the past continuous. Now what will be the transformation of this into the passive? The house was cleaned. The house was being cleaned by John. The house was cleaned by John. The house was cleaned by John. Now suppose I put this into the perfect continuous in the past tense. This will be John had been cleaning the house. This will be transformed to the house was being cleaned by John. Okay. So these are all indicating actions in the past. So either in the past simple, perfect, continuous, or the perfect continuous tenses. Now, what about the uses of the future tense? The future simple, for example. Sylvia shall cook the dinner. So here the agent of course is Sylvia, and Sylvia shall be cooking the dinner at some point of time, let's say tomorrow night, today night. So in passive, this will be the dinner shall be cooked by Sylvia. In future perfect, this will be Sylvia shall have cooked the dinner. Or in the passive, it shall be the dinner shall have been cooked by Sylvia. Now, suppose we want to write in the continuous tense in the future. We can say, Sylvia shall be cooking the dinner. So if we transform this into the passive, it will be the dinner shall be being cooked by Sylvia. And in the future perfect continuous, Sylvia shall have been cooking the dinner, which will become the dinner shall have been cooked by Sylvia. So these are the tenses in the future, and this is how we represent the passive form in the future. Now, we shall be comparing two sample extracts. The first one is an extract from a journalist's diary. Now, I'm reading the extract out to you. You see what is the manner of the writing. This is a journalist writing in his diary about certain actions or events. I was busy writing the news story of the Chandigarh kidnapping case till late last night. I finished the story at 2 a.m. and immediately sent it to my news editor. He rang me twice for clarifications after that. Finally, I went to bed at 3 a.m. I got up this morning at 7 a.m. I drank coffee and cast an eye on the news headlines. The Chandigarh kidnapping case figured largely in the news from the Nation page. Good. The chief sub-editor had invited us to a meeting at 9 a.m. He was happy with recent developments. He congratulated the staff. He introduced us to some changes in official procedure. We made notes. Okay. So what the journalist is doing is giving us a brief recap of various events that have taken place and are unfolding. So it's around a day before that he is writing about. So how he wrote the story of a kidnapping case. Then what he did when he got up in the morning and what happened at the meeting with the chief sub-editor and other details. Okay. Now I'm going to read out from a second extract, a second sample extract. Now here This is the extract from the maintenance log of a hospital by an employee who is looking after these things. He's in a supervisory position. Let's read. The toilets for the patients in the OPD section are cleaned at 8 a.m. every morning and then in 2-hour cycles after opening hours at 9 a.m. The staff toilet is also cleaned at the same time. The seating area in the OPD is mopped and vacuumed once in the morning and again at 4 p.m. Mopping and cleaning with disinfectant is also done twice daily. The curtains and table covers are washed and laundered every fortnight. Every Friday evening, the glass and wooden surfaces are cleaned. The electronic equipment, including the CT scan and Doppler machines in the diagnostic unit and the monitors in the cardiac unit, are checked every 3 days by the electrical maintenance staff. So it's very, very detailed. Now, what difference? Now, let's see. I have got some questions based on these two extracts. So can I read out the questions first? Okay, let me read out the questions. Then we will compare and contrast the two extracts. What did you notice about the two extracts? What kind of voice is used in extract 1 and in extract 2? What can you say? Can you say why they are different? When do we use active voice? When do we use the passive voice? Why do we transform? What will you do if the agent is unknown? Okay. Now, to answer some of these questions, what did you notice about the two extracts firstly? Well, we can say that both the extracts are written in different ways and in different voices. The first extract, which is the diary taken from the diary of the journalist, is much more immediate, or it has got the quality of immediacy, and it gives us the impression of things happening moment by moment. Let me go back to the extract. Yes, the actions of the journalist as they are taking place in the night, is writing till 2 a.m. late at night, answering questions from the editor, finally going to bed late at night, again early morning looking at the news headlines, then meeting. So it's a very busy day, okay? And we get the impression of things happening, things moving fast, important news events coming out, and a sense of vitality rather. Whereas in the second sample extract, which is extract 2, yes, extract 2, it is much more impersonal and matter of fact. In fact, this is a kind of a daily routine which is being talked about. So I suppose this cleaning log is really something which is given for regular maintenance and being updated. And so this is being updated. So there is nothing very noteworthy or extraordinary about this cleaning log. It's very, very commonplace. As a matter of fact, it is very ordinary. So what is it telling us? It's telling us about the cleaning operations, how the OPD section is cleaned and sanitized, and what are the intervals at which it is done, and also uh, other things like glasswork, curtains, everything is cleaned periodically, and electronic equipment is also looked after and cleaned, and everything is checked, okay, in the diagnostic units, that the machines are operating properly, the diagnostic section, in the cardiac unit, and so on. So it is a log about regular cleaning and maintenance. So this is given as a description, but it can also be given in a tabular form, where I have the different items like cardiac unit, OPD, and various other sections. And together with that, I will write the comments in another column, where I will say that, okay, clean every 2 hours, and or things like that. So I can also give the comments like that in a log, which is like a table or chart. But anyway, the subject is very ordinary, and the tone is also very formal, but routine. Okay, talking about routine work. Now, if you look at the voices used in extract 1 and 2, in extract 1, it is mostly in the active voice, and that is what is giving the sense of immediacy to the narrative. Whereas extract 2 is mostly in the passive voice. Okay. So, when do we use the active voice? When the subject is to be made prominent, then we use the active voice. And when the agent is to be made prominent, then we use the passive voice. Okay? And sometimes to make this transformation in order to make it more prominent. And if the agent is unknown, as is mentioned over here, we might say the authorities or use some other word for them. Now, there is an activity given over here which you might do, that is, give 3 cases where you will use the active voice and 3 cases where you will use the passive voice in the following: journal, blog, personal diary, teacher observation diary, recipe book, log book, travel guide, news report, technical handbook. I would say that technical handbook, log book, uh, news report, uh, also to some extent the teacher observation diary and the recipe book, these are all written in the passive voice. These are mostly written in the passive voice. Now, the journal or blog or personal diary, they are likely to be written in the active voice. So it basically depends on whether we are trying to make the subject prominent or the agent prominent. Okay? So accordingly, we will be writing, and often you will notice that the different kinds of documentation in the workplace context, that is technical manuals, handbooks, service manuals, books, reports, they are mostly written in the passive voice. So it is very important, therefore, to know about the passive voice and its uses and how to transform from active to passive. Now, what about the use of modals in the passive voice? How is that done? Now, modals are really auxiliary verbs and they are used to express a sense of possibility. Now, they would include the following: can, could, ought, may, might, shall, will, must, had to, should, and would. Now, they are used to form short answers to questions, affirmative or negative, usually accompanied by the infinitive. So, can you type? Yes, I can. Or could you get me a cup of coffee? Yes, I could. Or he will come. Will he? No, he won't. Gaurav gets up late. Doesn't he? No, he doesn't. Okay. Now we are going to see some of the detailed examples worked out of the modals in the passive construction or form. Okay, suppose we have may as a modal verb, and the active, this can be used in sentences like, you may give the boy coffee. Okay, you may give the boy a drink of coffee. Now, changed into the passive, this would be, coffee may be given to the boy. Okay. Now, what about the use of might? The car might need petrol. So this will be changed in the passive to, petrol might be needed by the car. Shall. Anita shall ring up her aunt tomorrow. This is going to change into, her aunt shall be rung up by Anita tomorrow. What about the use of will? E-books will soon replace books. Now, this will be changed into, books will soon be replaced by e-books. What about the use of must? You must take the evening flight. This will change to, the evening flight must be taken. By you is, of course, understood. What about the use of had to? Mother had to buy the dress, or the dress had to be bought by mother. What about the use of would? I would like to have eggs for breakfast. Changed into the passive, this will be, eggs would be liked by me for breakfast. So these are some uses of the modals, which are may, might, shall, will, must, had to, and would. Now, we shall be considering another set of modals in the passive. Yes. Now, these are should, like we should check the prices. This will become the prices should be checked. Or ought, you ought to ring the police. This will become the police ought to be rung up. Could, this will become you could buy the book, which is going to be changed into the book could be bought. So we can say the book could be bought or the book could be bought by you. But it doesn't sound so very natural. So it's better to say the book could be bought. Have to. Does Rita have to send a check? So this can be changed into does a check have to be sent by Rita? And can. We can make toffee in the factory. This will become toffee can be made by us in the factory. Okay, so these are some uses of modals in the passive. So I've looked at the uses of modals like may, might, shall, will, must, and to, and would, and also should, ought, could, have to, and can. Now, whether you are going to choose the active or the passive voice, that is basically a matter of two things. One is the kind of writing that you are mostly involved in, because we are talking about these transformations in writing more than in speaking. So it depends on the purpose for which you are writing. And the second thing would be your personal preferences. Whether you want to highlight the subject or you want to highlight the agent. Usually in writing of a more personal nature, the active voice is preferred, whereas in official and formal writing, passive constructions are preferred. Now, the passives are more impersonal, they're more objective, and keep the doer or authority at distance. Okay? So, it is often necessary that the doer is kept somewhat under wraps or in the background. Okay? So if you want to keep the doer a little nebulous or in the backdrop, it is better to use the passive voice. Also, the use of passive constructions is politically correct and it is useful in writing. In other words, in official documents like reports and business documents, the passive is used a lot. However, for personal statements, short personal statements expressing personal preferences and all, the active constructions are preferred. I think we can say, however, that nowadays, always using the passive construction is not regarded as a virtue, or overuse of the passive constructions tend to makes the writing very, very artificial sounding and far too impersonal. So that is really not preferable. So I think that nowadays we need to strike a kind of careful balance between the two, between writing purely in the active voice to writing only in the passive voice. So if we go on using any one of these consistently without intermingling at all with the other, then that piece of writing is not going to be very good, or in other words, it will be very, very uninteresting or flat sounding. So there is a question of tone after all. So if I write in the logbook or the report entirely that this was done by this person, this was done by another person. So it becomes very monotonous after some time, though it is official sounding enough. So nowadays, what is advocated is rather by the experts that there should be some sort of intermingling of the active and the passive. Even if I'm writing an impersonal document like a report and I'm writing mostly in the passive voice or using passive constructions, but still at some points of time, I need also to bring in a few instances of the use of the active voice, which make it much more simple, direct, and straightforward. So I hope that you have understood the difference between active and passive constructions and how to change over from active to passive voice and vice versa. So I think that you will be able to make profitable use of this knowledge in your future career applications when you will be writing documents mostly in the passive voice. So please try and practice as much as possible the passive constructions so that later on you do not have any difficulties with them, and also in writing the reports and other business documents. So this brings us to the end of our present lecture. So with that, I will end this lecture. Thank you. We will meet again in future lectures.